right. You guys are, yeah, we're good. This is live, so hot microphones. Hot microphones. Yeah, so I usually like to give it a few minute buffer to make sure everything's going well, but we already have one person in, so.
Just can you take one without them?
Okay, 3, 2, 1.
Okay. And then when Dr. is ready, you can get it.
Yep, let me just plug in my charge and I'll be good to go.
Sit on the circle, Mr. Hopkins.
You want to sit down? Do I have to go like crisscross?
Crisscross applesauce.
Kindergarten?
Yeah.
It's only good.
Robert.
Yeah, sorry.
Look forward, everyone. 3, 2, 1. All right.
Very nice. Can I get a help me? We're here with Mr. Clark, introduction to these speeches. We can slide trips out, we can slide phones. Oh, no, no, no. As a good. Yeah. Yeah, no, he just wanted to grab his laptop because I have to live stream going on that and then he.
I know that's unique.
And then this one of the lines, okay.
Yeah.
Who is K? Why?
I didn't know she wanted to go on.
Oh, could you look at, yes, I could go in there, that'd be great. So I have my invitation, and we'll go here. Rally, you want to be ready to go, and we'll get on to. Are you guys here
Oh, wow, you guys broke it really early.
Yes. Next.
Have a seat anywhere not.
Anywhere except those ones.
Yeah.
Except for in front of the camera.
Except for the camera.
Damn it, that's why I do my best work.
No.
Yeah, you'll just hang up there, and then as people come in, just tell them don't sit in front of the laptop.
Set up then.
I'll go. You guys are how many seats do you have?
Yeah, no, you know him.
Yeah, he's gonna be up there right now. If you don't tell him it doesn't work, I'll just like give him a stay. Okay, that sounds good. We don't want to be up there right now.
We go in order, but we want to say here.
Look, we're gonna be back in the voice and then.
And then I'll just go to when we reserve ones. So we want to. You go here.
I'll sit and listen.
So CJ.
Or my wife can sit.
Or mine.
You're here.
I'll play cards.
Because you go after. That's like reverse order. You're going last. And so you're going first. So you sit like here. And then whoever goes second, you'll take any. And then. Oh, you go here. So you can score, and then. Get your last.
I just want to say you guys are like. You said that's or maybe we should put her into the so we can start watching. Right here?
That way we both smack you together. Huh?
What are you flossing?
Nothing.
Said he's gonna smack me.
Yeah.
I said me and Lisa both were gonna do it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just.
Robin thought I was going to seriously? Where are you
I forget. You see my here.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, you?
Well, see, we went to church. The body parts of it, so that's pretty.
Let's see if mom sits here. She's going to sit by me.
I'm sorry, what was your name again?
Nikki.
I try not to remember all of Bush's friends.
You're
The more I know, the more I remember, the more I scare away.
You're good.
You're not standing this
Oh, you can't scare me. Also, have you been reading your text messages, Lee? Oh, okay. So, next week, Tuesday, I'm going to get the
Test, check, testing, check.
Can I steal
Okay.
next Tuesday to go Congo shopping? I'm taking her as my plus one.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
I'm excited.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I'm hurt.
Okay. Perfect.
Next Tuesday?
Yeah, over spring break.
So next Tuesday. So
Oh,
Tuesday.
during the week or something? During the
Yeah.
day?
Because we don't have
Yeah,
spring break
Probably
coming
around
up.
Where are you guys gonna go?
Arrowhead. I'm gonna take all back roads. I don't take freeway.
Hey, you can drive.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
You can drive.
I forgot.
Okay, this is my cue.
Okay. Bye, girls. I'll work it out with your parents.
It's all you.
Oh, I got you. Yeah, I take all back roads.
Trust you.
Yeah.
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 I'm looking for a little more serious like this. Yes, Mr. Hyde, I will not do anything that you.
Yes, Mr. Hagrid.
Yeah,
I
man.
promise I will not hurt your daughter, get her in any accidents, and I will be the safest driver ever.
That I'm not worried about. I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about the other side,
Whatever.
the wild side, where you guys start doing, like, you know, drugs.
No, we're not into that. We're not into that.
I'm not gonna have my daughter.
I'm not like that. I promise. My dad's a police officer. If he found out I was doing anything like that, I would already be buried on 6 feet for 12 feet.
Your dad's a police officer? Take her as much as you can.
Okay.
That's worse than me. I mean, I haven't done.
You're good. He's I was just at the park because my brother's playing baseball right now.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. My brother, CJ. He's 8. You want to be friends with him? You probably be his only friend. I'm kidding.
What is this? Are those your friends too?
Yeah.
Should we just start a whole bristle row? No, that way we can do the wave.
I'm looking at live stream. Hey, Mr. Clark, this, I still didn't get this. Can you try to turn your computer a little bit more? Can you go back to the first slide for me?
When are they gonna get to yours?
Did you send Grandma or Mitch?
It works for me. Yeah, I'll do it now. Thank you, Mr. Clark. Let's take just a minute. My telephone will be okay. Just a minute.
It's like a month away.
Get out of jail free card.
That's what you're listening to the words.
Feel like Nikki or Nicole? Okay, sometimes you call you Nicole, sometimes you call me Nicole. And it makes it confusing. I think you're too.
You're good. Either one. Yeah, I go, honestly,
I told you
I go
she
by
wanted
both.
to sit
Oh, yes, we did talk about this.
Yeah, no, either works for me. I have multiple nicknames, so.
I hang out more with the girls. And the boys just stay over here. Have you go to the-
I gotta get my phone.
And I know you do.
I would actually go.
I love it.
I can do everything else. Yes, that's how I say, like, I'm gonna Here's my.
Like, I like how hers works. Oh, yeah.
I saw him, I saw him.
No, I had tried. I didn't ask. Like how one of our shirts is just called No way. That's literally what it is. That's literally Rainbow Backhouse. And it's literally everywhere. Looks like she's about to present. Except just her. Oh my god. It's like should I get her? I was trying to look for you. We should. Wasn't sure.
Testing, 1, 2, 3. All right, sounds like we can all hear. Hi, we're gonna get started. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Mr. Donovan. I've been the club sponsor here for TED Ed for the last 5 years. So this is our 5th rendition of TED Ed Live. Over the course of the first 4 years, between online streams and in-person attendance, we've had somewhere between 750 to 1,000 views. So these speeches definitely make their way out into the community, and our students continue to have a positive impact on the ideas being exchanged here. Now, for today, you guys are gonna hear some amazing speeches from some awesome students who started this journey with the same big question in mind. What am I passionate about? What message do I think the world should hear? So each person got to pick their own topic and receive feedback throughout the process from me and the rest of the club members. So as we start, just a quick kind of logistics. We have 10 total speakers, which are outlined in the pamphlet you should have got when you walked in. We will have 5 speakers go. We'll take a brief, about 5 to 10 minute intermission that we can stretch, use the facilities if needed, and then we'll have our last 5 go. So after all 10 have spoken, there will be free food and refreshments out in the lobby. I would like to take this time to thank all the parents, guardians, aunts, uncles, cousins, whoever brought food to help make this possible. We really appreciate it. It gives us a nice time to bond after hearing all these incredible speeches. Now, before we get started, a couple other things. First, we would greatly appreciate it if you silenced your cell phone. These students have worked really hard to get confident in public speaking and focus in on delivering their message, and distractions like that might tear them away from what the point they're trying to make. So if you could do that now, that'd be great. At the end of all 10 speakers, parents, guardians, family, and friends, you'll have an opportunity to take pictures up here with the 10 students. We'll have a huge group photo. So if you could wait until the end to do photos, that would be fantastic. All right. If there's no other questions, we will get rolling. Our first speaker is going to be Jeffrey. Jeffrey, come on up.
Hello, my name is Jeffrey Blau. I'm a freshman here at Boulder Creek High School. And my speech is called Empathetic Absence. One day after school, me and some friends were heading to the park. We looked around and we saw these group of teens going around interviewing people. After they finished interviewing an old lady, they came up to us and they said, $16. Take it or double it and give it to the next person. And honestly, I was about to say take it before one of my friends said double it and give it to the next person. All right, I could have gotten some food, but it's fine. So then after a bit, they go around to other people, and we see them, and we're all like standing there, and we see them go up to a homeless man, and we overhear them handing him $256. So we're all, of course, happy for him. But then the second the one filming puts his phone down, one of them runs, grabs the money out of his hand, and then they all book it to one of their cars. And then on the drive home that day, I was scrolling through social media and I realized how normal it really was. I mean, people would make snark comments on a person just being happy or energetic, and they won't even try to gain perspective. And when you try to tell them to imagine that they're in the same situation, it's always, well, I don't have a car. Well, I don't have a sister. Well, I don't live there. What happened to loving and supporting each other? Is it because of social media? Because of stereotypes? And I'm not trying to sound like a saint here. I realize how little I would empathize with certain people in situations. Whether I was grossed out or annoyed, I'd often avoid people online or even in real life. But I finally realized how dumb that was. And we're often told quotes like, treat people how you want to be treated, or we speak the words from a book in our minds. But I want you to ask yourself, are you really reading it? Are you really hearing it? It's sight but no vision. We are constantly taught about empathy, yet it is still in such low supply. Whether you're homeless or rich, smart or dumb, mean or nice, whether it's controllable or uncontrollable, people will be rude and they will find a way to criticize you. But what is causing this? One of the major sources of this is stereotypes. No matter who you are put into a specific category at birth. And then, of course, how you choose to present yourself. Stereotypes have killed millions and started wars throughout history. It's important that we as a community treat each other with kindness and respect, no matter who they appear. We all have different backgrounds and stories that shouldn't be peripheral, all because of the way we look or speak. Something that changed my perspective was this quote stated by Brené Brown. Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice. In order to be empathetic, we have to believe that we are capable of seeing the world through someone else's eyes. When we lose that ability, we lose our sense of shared humanity. We get told and taught about being empathetic and kind, but no one ever talks about how taking that simple step to help a person can also make you vulnerable. In this time, it is so uncommon for people to really spread kindness that when you do, you are the discreet one. You are the one that's causing a scene. And then again and again, now you are the one who's being targeted for this criticism. But why? How? How did we just turn against each other? For popularity? For acceptance? One reason for the spread of this hate is social media. Now, I'm sure all of you have heard time and time again about the negative effects of social media. But have you really heard about how it can really form you are as a person? Children nowadays are being given phones and iPads without even the parents thinking a second thought, just to pass some time. But how does that form your child as a person, and how could that cause a lack of empathy? Well, an article called "Why Does Hate Spread So Fast?" The social psychological perspective talks about how basically hate is spread faster because of the traction it gets. I mean, if you really think about it, it makes sense because people are always caught around different, who's canceled, different celebrities, why are people fighting in an argument? And because of this traction, social media has pushed it out more, which means more children get it. And when more children get it, they begin to just view it as normal. Another reason for this is bad childhood environments and abuse. Basically, people around the child can also form how they are as a person and how they see life and how they see others. Like when people go to school, they constantly hear people making inappropriate jokes, or they hear them talk about different people and make fun of each other. When that happens, they see it as normal. They just begin to go do the same thing. And when they do the same thing, it just creates this nonstop domino effect where everybody just begins to have the same perspective on life and outlook. And this is dangerous because it shows how it's not the child who is ill-hearted, it's the people around him. And it also can show the power that we have to help. It's important that we create a healthy environment for not only children, but ourselves. Remember, we can only see with open eyes and think with open minds. Don't take this for granted. Each and every one of us has the power to create an environment of love and kindness. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jeffrey, for kicking us off. That's fantastic. Next up is Jaden. Jaden is going to talk about the brain a little bit and how it can lead to limitless mental fortitude. So Jaden, come on up.
My name is Jaden Harmon, and I'm a freshman at Boulder Creek High School. If I told someone to define the word tenacious, how would they respond? Think about it for a second. I know that I didn't actually know the definition of this word before I looked it up on Google, but it basically means to work hard, to not be lazy, to be proactive, all those things that I struggle with. But basically, it's the willingness that people have to accomplish the hard tasks in front of them. And believe it or not, this is something that we can strengthen. It's like a skill. When you practice it over and over again, it gains traction. And this helps you to accomplish greater tasks that you never would have believed possible if you hadn't started out in the first place. Basically, there is this part in our brain, it's around the center, and it's the nexus of control. It's called the anterior midcingulate cortex, which is something that my dad had to explain to me. Where's my flashcard? Give me a second. It basically grows every time you do hard things. Maybe not on like a noticeable level, thank goodness, because we wouldn't want our heads imploding. But it does grow physically, which scientists discovered maybe 15, 20 years ago. And so it doesn't just strengthen like figuratively, it, sorry, give me a second. The decision compounded over years can either help it grow or shrink. So when you go home after a long day at school or work, basically, you can make the decision to get more things done, or you can lay down in bed and take a nap, which is also something that I do daily. But basically, over time, these decisions will compound, and your perseverance, which is a key in leading to your brighter future, will skyrocket. Okay, so the research on this is extensive, and I didn't read like 50 articles on it, but I do know that I researched it for a couple hours for every day, maybe a week, and there are some pretty interesting things about it. So it works this way for a reason. The anterior midcingulate cortex grows when we push it to do hard things, just like any muscle in our body. So when you go to the gym like 3 days a week, and you lift weights, and you do this for months on end, everyone knows that you got some wicked biceps. This is the same thing with your anterior midcingulate cortex. So it performs calculations based on past experiences to determine how difficult this task is and whether it wants to spend this energy on it. And the more difficult and painful and hard it is, the more energy it will take. It is our natural response to try and conserve this energy, which is why working out and trying to figure out a math problem can sometimes make us really frustrated and want to give up. But when we do these things, that is when we grow as people and in intellect and in so many other things. When basically this works for both good and bad habits, it is very essential to watch out for those bad habits you're forming, especially when you're in your younger years, like 12 to 25, I think, especially below 2 years old, although at that point, it's your parents who are more responsible for taking care of like what you're processing and what you're doing daily. So this all does start at a very young age, obviously, like I just said. We've given the term iPad kids to young children who are constantly on a screen, and sometimes this isn't like anyone's fault particularly, but the adults will either want more free time or they're way too busy to take care of the kid 24/7, which isn't something that should be blamed. Parents do need to rest. But this, just like Jeffrey pointed out, actually does affect like what happens to their physical brain, and they are not getting enough stimulation in the real world after having been on their iPad 24/7 for them to be interested in anything else. And this trains their brains at a very young age to seek out comfort and basically discard anything that will make them work. And this does grow into something kind of scary. When you're a teenager and you have a phone and all you want to do is scroll or text your friends or play games, watch YouTube, and this can train us to do the same thing as well, discard all the things that make us grow. However, this isn't completely a problem, especially if you're doing something that helps you grow every day. And for me, that's running. I love running so much, and I know that there are people who hate it because it's painful, and I know I'm weird because of it. But I also know that there are other people who love it as well. And I think I would say one of the main reasons is we feel accomplished afterwards. And we feel happy. It actually releases endorphins. And this is a good thing to build, a good habit to build. You don't have to run, sorry. But anything that challenges you and helps you grow, especially if you enjoy it, that's really going to make your life better, I promise. And the pain over time will help you build strength and help you accomplish things you've never imagined. So I would encourage you to go out today or tomorrow or sometime and just find like one tiny habit that challenges you and helps you grow. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Nice job, Kaden. Next up is Kelly. Kelly is going to start talking a little bit about science, but in a different lens when it comes to teleportation. Come on up, Kelly.
Physics is a fundamental field of study for all sciences. And some may say that it's such a philosophical and abstract topic, and it surely is. Remember the apparition spell in Harry Potter? It's a magical practice for all wizards and witches to teleport themselves from one place to another. This completely fantasy-wise setting seems so impossible in the real life, probably because of the international wizarding secrecy. We muggles will never see those in real life. Well, now, let's physics bring there. Teleportation could actually be real with quantum mechanics. Well, speaking of quantum mechanics, it sounds like a really sophisticated topic, and it surely is. Well, however, we can understand it with pretty simple topics. So Schrödinger is one of the founding fathers of this field. And you guys might or might not have heard about the famous Schrödinger cat. So if we put a cat in a box and put a bomb in there that has a 50% chance of blowing off, what would be the state of the cat before we open the box? Would it be dead or would it be alive? Don't worry, it's a thought experiment, so no cats are harmed in this process. And by the way, Schrödinger didn't even own a cat at all. So he probably hates cats. But before I give out the answer. Let's give a guess. So by a show of hands, who think that a cat will be alive? All right, thank you. You can put your hands down. And who think that the cat will be dead? Right, interesting. Thank you, guys. So actually, it's not alive or dead, but it's in a mixed state of alive and dead. So in a fancier way, we call this the quantum superposition, in which a particle exists in multiple states at the same time. So in other words, the cat is not alive or dead, but alive and dead at the same time. So, but how is that possible? All these mysteries could be explained with a dual particle and wave duality of everything. So what is a wave? We can see that a wave has some sort of wavelength extending over some region of space, and it occupies multiple places at once. And a particle is simply just a point occupying one specific place. All right, so one way I like to think of this is that waves theoretically could extend infinitely through space. And there must be like some place with higher energy and some place with lower energy. So places with higher energy, they will have a higher amplitude, which is easier to observe. Those places are the places that we call is a wave packet. So since wave packet is so easy to identify, we say that this location is the location of the particle. So in other words, if the particle is more concentrated and compact with energy, it will look more like a particle. And if the wave is more spread out, it will look more like a wave. This concept is so so this might not be significant in the macroscopic world or anything bigger than the atom, right? Who can imagine the cat being like a wave? However, this is true and observable in the subatomic world. In this field of physics, all objects are made up of quantums, or the smallest possible physical entity involved in interaction, which means that Newton's physics wouldn't apply to quantum anymore. Since quantum behaves like a wave, it exists at multiple places at the same time. So we couldn't really predict where the particle would be the next second, but we could predict the probability of where it might be. So this topic or this concept is so unsettling to Schrödinger. Despite pioneering this field, he eventually abandoned it and went on to write about biology. So something that's more down to earth. Well, back to our real topic. So now we know something about quantum mechanics. But how do all these concepts of superposition and dual particle wave reality relate to teleportation? Well, let's first define what teleportation is. So we have to first disappear from one place and then instantaneously transfer our information to another place and then reappearing in another place. So to achieve this, we have to find a way to instantaneously transfer information. And that is where quantum entanglement comes in. Okay, so quantum entanglement is a process where it describes two particles being entangled, which means that their information is linked no matter how far apart they are. So a way I like to think of this is that instead of thinking of it as two particles, we can say it is in the same wave. It's the same wave, where we observe two wave packets, which we define it as two particles. So those particles could actually carry a lot of information. For example, an electron could either spin up or down. And if we have two electrons and we put them together for a while, and then you give one electron to one of your friends where he or she flies across the globe, you could always guarantee that when your electron spins up, your friend's electron spins down, and also work in the opposite way. And if your friend somehow appears to be flying beyond the solar system, you can guarantee that this pattern will still be valid. So this means that information is transferred instantaneously, faster than the speed of light, which Albert Einstein famously called this the spooky action at a distance. So now we know that we could find a way to transfer information really fast. As long as we find a way to interpret those quantum information, we could recreate the exact same particle with the same quantum state as the original. In 1997, Austrian physicist Anton Zeilinger and his team successfully teleported a photon across a distance of space and through quantum entanglement. And since then, scientists have achieved this teleportation through increasing distances, including experiments with electrons and atoms. Well, now it's quite impossible still to really teleport large objects such as a baseball or like a human being because of the trillions and quadrillion atoms in those objects. However, teleporting small bits of quantum information is not impossible and actually already applied in fields such as quantum encryption and quantum computing. But never say never. Remember that humans first learned about quantum teleportation or quantum mechanics exactly 100 years ago, 1925. And now we could teleport or instantaneously transfer information across cities and even from Earth to satellites in space. And we will never know where technology will bring us in the next 50, 100, or even 1,000 years. Think of how technology advances nowadays. I'm born in 2007, and I've experienced the era of using cassette tapes and those foldable Nokia phones. Until someday, I was scrolling on YouTube, and I discovered that people start calling those wired earbuds vintage. It's crazy. So what a jump, like in such a 17 years, like short 17 years of time. Well, maybe one day we could travel from Arizona to London in a split second. And I hope that when that day comes, I won't have to book another 12-hour flight. Thank you, and I hope you guys all learned about teleportation today.
I want to second Kelly on that, not having to travel on planes anymore, but let's make that happen. Next up is Ethan, who's going to talk about the power of reading books and just general knowledge. Ethan, come on up.
In George Orwell's 1984, the dystopian government maintains its power by banning books, by preventing the people from knowing any other knowledge outside that which the government gives, and crushes all opposition beneath. The people of this society, thus, were prevented from being literate, and those who were literate were massively indoctrinated and used by the state. Contrastingly, in Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, the people in this society are not prevented from reading books, but rather they are distracted and are forced to do something else. The government drugs them and stimulates them on a sense of pleasure. The people in this society thus were literate, but they simply didn't care to read. Neil Postman summed it up nicely when he said, Orwell feared those who would ban books. Huxley feared that there'd be no reason to ban a book, for there'd be no one who wanted to read one. Now, there's debates about who was more right, but I believe that we are closer to Huxley's dystopia than Orwell's. Why? Well, all of us, or I hope all of us, know how to read. Okay, I think that's a yes. But the American Literacy Project reports that most Americans read only about at a 7th or 8th grade level. Is being a bad reader much better than not being a reader at all? Is being a bad piano player much better than not being a piano player at all? I often hear people tell me that they don't want to read books, that they're too boring, or that they'd rather do something else, it's not fun, or they just don't have the time. But this is utterly untrue. All of us do indeed want to read books. Why? Because all of us want knowledge. All of us are innately curious. And books will satiate that curiosity. Aristotle famously said that all men by nature desire to know. And that was no less true in his time than ours. Only we can say that we become a little bit more distracted. We have phones, we have TVs, we have all these advertisements which scream at us to buy me or to play me or to do whatever. Yet if we only realize that we have more knowledge in this thing right here than the President of the United States had in 1994, how would we use that? How would we use the fact that we have a vast abundance of books, that we have libraries on every street corner, but that they go unused because people just don't care to learn? Learning is a tool that we can all use, but seldom does it ever get used. Now, if I'm to inform you and to exhort you to the use of books, I must first give you a brief history lesson about how books even came to be, and then at the end of how we can all work to be better readers. Now, books first emerged, at least in the modern sense, about 3,000 years ago. They were usually in the form of scrolls or codices, which was pretty much like a modern book, or letters or other ways. And they emerged mainly because of the same reason why we have conversations. We have a conversation because we're trying to seek the truth of some matter. We're trying to dance our way up to something outside of both of us. When I ask someone, what did you have for dinner? I'm trying to get to the truth of what they had for dinner. And when we read a book, the author is trying to tell us something that he thinks is or she thinks is true, and they want to tell us. So books in this sense were also they were thriving in the Roman world, but only to the aristocracy, as most people in this society could not read. Only about 10%, and that number probably isn't too accurate given the ancientness of it all. But now we all have this ability to read, but the ancient Romans, very few of them could read, and look at the accomplishments which they did. They would also establish great libraries, such as the one in Alexandria, although that was established by the Greeks, and the one in Ephesus. And these libraries would contain vast amounts of knowledge, although not a lot of knowledge compared to the libraries we have now. But as Rome began to collapse and Rome also began to Christianize, monasteries would begin to replace libraries. And monks were not typically people who were of the educated or the senator's son type of people. They were more lowly people. They were more just ordinary people who sought a better life. Yet, as the society became a lot more dangerous, and barbarian invasions would also threaten the safety of all these monks, monasteries would be in threat of getting pillaged or sacked, such as the Vikings in England who would pillage and sack monasteries there. And monks would try to shelter all the books they could, but oftentimes they failed. Yet, I should mention that monks had a very limited amount of books, and yet they had a vast amount of learning and knowledge. And now we have a vast abundance of books, and yet we have very little learning. Now, this all changed in about the year 1439 when the first printing press was invented. Knowledge was now able to spread much farther, much quicker, and paired with the fact that the monastic system had morphed into the university system, and literacy rates were on the rise, people of any sort could now read. And by the time of the American Revolution, in fact, 60 to 80% of the white male population could read. Now, I must ask again, the literacy rate has gone up in the past centuries. Yet are we using this power to its full advantage? For we have seen throughout history, especially in the past 100 years, what happens when we do not read. For example, dictators like Stalin and Mao and Hitler would ban books. They did not allow their people to have free thought, because if you thought anything outside of what the state wanted, you were a threat. So how do we work to be better readers? How do we work to carry on this tradition that the monks had, where they transcribed and kept books to future monks and later future generations? How do we use this superpower that we've all been given? Well, first of all, We can actively use our curiosity. The American economist Thomas Sowell said that seldom do people think things through foolishly. More often, they do not bother to think things through at all. So please think things through. Ask questions, ask stupid questions. Like, why is it that my coffee can go from hot to cold? Or why is there 5,280 feet in a mile? Or who is Ted and why does he care so much about talking? Or maybe ask the questions that Kelly presented. Obviously, those questions you might say are, oh, I can't understand quantum physics. That's too complex for me. But no, I say that you can understand it as long as you're willing to learn it. And books, especially, provide you the material for which you can learn. But now, to recommend you anything, I would recommend that there's a great collection of books called the Great Books of the Western World, and that contains a vast amount of books that's been collected throughout the centuries, ranging from Plato all the way up to Alexander Solzhenitsyn. If I had to recommend you specifically one book, I would probably recommend Plato's Republic. That's a really good book. It's very interesting, and I hope it would spark your curiosity to go learn something else. Now, my third point is that we need to make sure that our reading is always going to be in a way that is fruitful. Because sometimes we're going to read and we're going to be kind of arrogant about it. We're just going to read because we believe that this is going to produce some sort of good for us that we can't really see, and that we just do it because we want to make ourselves feel like we're smart. But no, reading has to be done earnestly, and it has to be done truthfully and honestly. Because if we don't read honestly, then we're going to lead ourselves into pride, and we're going to not learn anything at all. Now, my fourth and my final point is a quote from C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis said that we all need books that will correct the characteristic mistakes of our own period. And that means the old books. And that this can only be done, and that the only palliative is to keep the clean sea breeze of the centuries blowing through our minds. And that can only be done by reading old books. Now, reading books is something that we all have a responsibility to do. We are lucky enough to live in a country where we can read any book that we want, even if we disagree vehemently with it, even if we think it is the most disgusting, despicable book, we can still have the liberty to read it. Not everyone in the world has that liberty. In fact, not everyone in the world even has the ability to read. So are we going to use this power that we've been given? Are we going to use what the monks gave us? Are we going to use all their efforts to produce something good? Are we going to do this because we want to progress society farther? Are we going to do this because we want to keep knowledge and not something that somebody else defines it as? Are we going to do this because we want to seek truth? Are we just going to let this power slip away from us? Are we going to let tyrants trample over us? Are we going to dare to be free thinkers, to dare to think? Are we going to allow ourselves to do that? Because if we dare to think, if we dare to ask questions, if we dare to believe in something, to believe it even unto our death, then I tell you, verily, verily, I tell you, that if you dare to read and ask questions, if you dare to satiate your curiosity, then you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ethan. This will be our last speech before a quick intermission. I will introduce Ariana now, talking about the creatures of habit.
I am here to talk to you about a bear. This bear. I'm so sorry. This bear. I call this bear Fuzzy Wuzzy. Because is that not a very fitting name? Anyway, Fuzzy Wuzzy lives in a zoo in Alaska. He doesn't give TED Talks. With a few trees, some grass, and a little hut. But the thing is, Fuzzy Wuzzy is bored. And all he has to do in his enclosure is walk. So that's what Fuzzy Wuzzy does. He walks to the front of his enclosure, and then he stops, and he walks to the back of his enclosure, and then he turns and he walks to the front of his enclosure, and you will not believe this, Fuzzy Wuzzy walks to the back of his enclosure again. So Fuzzy Wuzzy has done this so much that he has created a path in the grass that covers his enclosure. And no simple routine or habit can cause this devastation in his grass. This is a serious mental disorder. Stress and a lack of enrichment in an environment creates mental illness in animals. It is called zoochosis. Zoochosis can be defined in several ways. For Fuzzy Wuzzy, it was obsessive repetitive behavior. For others, it could be swaying, over-grooming, anxiety, depression, or even self-harm. Now, I know that some of you, even in the back of your minds, are wondering why this matters and why you should care. Or are you wondering why the second half of that list sounded so familiar? Well, it's because I lied. I'm not here to talk about Fuzzy Wuzzy. I'm here to talk about you. Because everything I just said about zoochosis applies to you. It applies to the person sitting next to you. It applies to your friends, your families. It even applies to me. As I said, zoologists have seen that zoochosis appears in animals without proper enclosures. And this might not seem all that relevant because none of us here have enclosures, at least not physical ones. But there are some walls that are not physical. So let me introduce you to the theory of self-domestication. Self-domestication is the idea that what humans have done to domesticate other animals, we have done to ourselves as well. To explain domestication, I'll tell you about an experiment conducted by Dmitry Belyaev to domesticate foxes. So Dmitry Belyaev decided that he would domesticate foxes based on their traits towards humans. And he allowed only the calmest and most positive foxes to breed and pass on their traits. And in just 20 years, he had transformed that population of foxes from being almost entirely hostile to being almost entirely supportive of humans and even going so far as to seek out human attention. So just as Belyaev chose to breed only the tame foxes, humans choose only to allow other tame humans into their lives. A tame human, of course, being one that decides to fit into social norms and not be disruptive or anything else. Unfortunately, this creates a biological need for humans to fit in. So we curate behaviors and routines around the world we see. And these routines can be anything from waking up early into the morning, going to work or school, then complaining about being there and sitting on a device for 3 hours, and then you go home and then you go to sleep and wonder what you're doing with your life. Unfortunately, while some of these behaviors are bad, some of these routines are very important. And it's kind of hard to tell the difference between some of them, but really, it doesn't matter how important they are because these routines still create a monotonous environment that does not provide proper enrichment to the human mind. So if you combine the stress of trying to be a normal human with the lack of enrichment created by our routines, you find that this sounds a lot like the stress and lack of proper enrichment in Fuzzy Wuzzy's enclosure. So if you think back to Fuzzy Wuzzy was diagnosed with zoochosis because he was limited by his environment. We get diagnosed with mental illnesses because we limit ourselves. So now I give you this task. Escape the zoo and defy the limits that society places on your mind. But how? How do we do this? Well, we know that it's a lack of a good enriching environment and stress that causes zoochosis. So we need to find something that does not fit into this category. We need to find something new, such as taking up a hobby like writing or drawing. You could start a TED Talk. You could even advocate for a cause or volunteer for a people. I remind you that unlike Fuzzy Wuzzy's fence, your cage is entirely figurative. So just as you build the walls around yourself, you can build yourself a door out to where your brain can explore the full expanse of this world, so you don't have to be stuck walking the same path, wearing down the grass until nothing can grow. Thank you.
Nice job. So right now we're going to take about a 5-minute break. If you need restrooms, they are back through those middle doors, down those small stairs on the right-hand side, and we will come back here in about 5 minutes to hear the last 5 speeches. Thank you.
Actually, no, that's pretty scary. I'm not even surprised. If she didn't get diagnosed in her death list, she could have just yeah, sure. No, I'm surprised she didn't.
It's hard to do it.
So, like, if you want I did okay. I got 80s on my website. not like a weird grade. I'm just like I love it, but it's not my job. I really put all next year they really want me to dedicate to it. I'm like, just no. I'll be in sector, I'm not going to dedicate. So I will be doing the rest of my program next year. I'm going to dedicate to that. I will be I'm excited. You can do it. They have one, but I can't. It's really good.
No, I know. Oh, I know. I told him.
So their pharmacy science is only a one-year program, so I get to do it next year. I told her she and then I'll pause. Looks like a big just I'll be a pharmacist. I know. Breaking Bad, you know? Yeah. I love the text I get from my dad. Be very careful with your I just don't like the cold weather. I was loving these last 2 days of like 70, 80, beautiful. But then we're going back to the 50s. I can't. I hate it. I love summertime. I can't do it. I can't. I just no. Yeah. I would take that like a 50. I like that. See, like yeah. I love summer. I love Mr. Donovan, are you the killer?
I can't tell you that. That would ruin Mr. Rice's crime scene.
No, come on, you gotta tell me. Come on. It's okay. I'll be interviewing. I'll be interviewing you. I didn't know he's a teacher. He teaches history. Oh, sure.
See you.
Sit. Sam. Sam. Okay. Sit down. Sit down.
All right, testing, 1, 2, 3. All right, perfect. We're back and rolling. So we have 5 more incredible speeches coming your way now. And we'll start off with Sam Eby next. Come on up, Sam.
You are either crazy, you're a liar, or you're telling the truth. To explain, if I said the sky is blue, you would see that I'm obviously telling the truth. However, what if I said the sky is green? You'd either call me crazy or a liar. Now, this is a silly claim, but there is one claim that will determine the trajectory of your life, and that is Jesus claiming to be God. Before I go any further, so what that Jesus claimed to be God? Zeus claimed to be God, and he's just mythology. Wouldn't Jesus be just the same? Well, J. Warner Wallace, a cold case detective and also a skeptic at the time, decided to investigate the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, which claim to be eyewitness accounts of Jesus' life, death, and resurrection. As a cold case detective, he would have to convict people that were charged for murder 20 years prior. And while he could use eyewitnesses, most of them would be dead, meaning he'd have to rely on other sources like documents and chain of custody. So being well-versed in how eyewitnesses behave and having the documents of the gospel, he spent 6 months laying everything out. After extensive research, he comes to the conclusion that the gospels are accurate and reliable. J. Warner Wallace goes into more detail in his book, Cold Case Christianity, but it boils down to 4 main ideas. First, the accounts were written early enough and in the location that Jesus would have resided. Secondly, the testimony and story of Jesus from the disciples remain the same, and so forth. Thirdly, it can be corroborated by other outside sources such as archaeology and even some secular sources. And lastly, the disciples would have had no reason to lie, some even leaving fame, power, and money only to be persecuted and killed. And with this, he draws the conclusion. That's why he draws up the conclusion. So now that we see that Jesus is a real person, there's one stipulation. The things that he said and wrote claim of how he's God. I mean, that's kind of what it is. So why does that matter? Well, C.S. Lewis wrote in his book, Mere Christianity, this quote: "A man who was merely a man and said the sort of things Jesus said would not be a great moral teacher. He would either be a lunatic, on a level with the man who says he's a poached egg, or else he would be the devil of hell. You must make your choice. Either this man was and is the Son of God, or else a madman, or something worse. In other words, liar, lunatic, Lord." So what if Jesus lied? I mean, Roman emperors and ancient kings would always claim to be God or the Son of God. Jesus could just be the same. Really big issue with this one. Jesus was an Israelite. The Israelites were a group of people that claimed there was only one God. And people followed him. And the religious leaders at the time charged him for blasphemy and had him crucified. And all his disciples scattered for fear that who they thought was the Messiah was not the Messiah. So if Jesus was merely just a man, the movement would have died out immediately. And for the same reason, he couldn't have just been mistaken that he was God. Well, okay, wasn't he just crazy, or his disciples were crazy? Well, another issue. Crazy people don't focus outwardly. And Jesus' ministry is all about serving others, loving others, the forgiveness of sins and healing. That doesn't sound like a crazy person to me. And what if his disciples were crazy? Well, the same issue with him lying about it. They all scattered. And they couldn't have just hallucinated seeing Jesus because he appears over 500 different people over a period of 40 days. It's really hard to hallucinate that over 40 days. And because of that, there's no way he could have just, that happened. And I forgot to mention this. Some of his disciples, his closest disciples, Thomas, for example, doubted that he was actually Jesus and said, you have not raised. And he said, touch my wounds. So, in the midst of all of this, in the scared disciples in Israel, amongst the religious leaders, elite religious leaders who had influence and power, and Rome, who hated Christianity, they spread the gospel no matter the cost. And it all boiled down to one statement Jesus made in Matthew 16:15. And I say unto you, he said, who do you say I am? The disciples saw that he was Lord, they worshiped him as he was Lord, and they lived as he was Lord. If Jesus really is Lord, this will be the most important question of your life. For the things he said and did do not allow for the in-between. But again, don't just take my word for it. Go and study the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus recorded in the Gospels, just as Wallace did. And while you're reading, I want you to ask the question, who do you say that Jesus is? Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Sam. Next up, Bavara is going to take on how to understand and navigate this world of information, misinformation, and all the research behind it.
Hi, it's me, the bear. Not really, but I do want to know who here owns a phone. Show of hands. Okay, who here thinks their phone is probably not that good for them? Why? No, like really why? Does it make you sleep worse? Do you get major FOMO? Is your social battery really low? Is your attention span really short? How do you know that's from your phone? Did you run a trial? Control your variables? Did you hear it somewhere? Read it somewhere? Was that source credible? Are you sure? See, we don't actually have that much research on phone usage, certainly not long-term usage. And the research that we do have is divided, inconclusive. And yet we still have this idea in our heads that phones must be bad for us. This is a moral panic. Moral panic, noun. An instance of public anxiety caused by a thing or event that threatens the moral standards of society. Now, the term was coined by Stephen Cohen in his 1967 PhD thesis. He was talking about British subculture movements and their rivalries, but he identified two main groups: folk devils, who were the ones doing the immoral acts, and moral entrepreneurs, the ones who were making a fuss about it. So, this term took on a life of its own. It describes anything from the Salem witch trials to the Red Scare to obesity to cell phone usage. But the thing that connects all of these things together is one, that people got so swept up in their anxiety that they didn't take a moment to maybe think about what they were repeating, to research it. And two, that all of these instances were pretty profitable for people in power. Rule of thumb, if something is making you really anxious that you're not researching it before repeating it, probably do that. Okay, we got there. You're at your computer, you're sitting there, trying to look something up. Here's another definition: confirmation bias. Now, the tendency of people to attribute new information into preconceived notions or conclusions. Now, this term originates in ancient Greece, but it wasn't academically used until Henry Wason, who identified two types, and both of them are really hard to get rid of, so stick with me. The first one is the biased search for information. In other words, how are you typing things into Google? If you're saying something like how cell phones are bad for teens, you're getting a slew of negative articles. If you type in the opposite, you'll get a slew of positive articles. And neither one is an accurate snapshot of the data. There's two ways to deal with this, and you should probably use both. First one, use an actual research engine. And it's as easy as typing in Google Scholar and going there. And the second one, frame your question as ambiguously as possible. Avoid words like bad or good. Google wants to please you. It's an algorithm. So if you give it any hint of what you want to hear, it's going to give it to you. The second one, a bit harder, is retrieval bias. Okay, at this point, I think we should all agree that we're lizard-brained idiots, because this boils down to we see things many times, and so we perceive them to be true. This is why advertisements work, and why propaganda does too. This basically means if you're on a highway and you see a billboard multiple times, the next time you go to a store, you're subconsciously gravitating toward that product. And this is yet again subconscious, so you're not really able to notice it. You shouldn't. And the one thing you can probably do to counteract it is surround yourself with different sources of information that say different things. I don't care if you have to take 5 minutes out of your day, do it. Just look at a different news network. Look at someone who disagrees with you. It's that easy. Avoid echo chambers. And I'm not telling you to do this all at once, and I'm not going to fault you for slipping up because that's human. But I will fault you for ignoring it completely. Because yeah, then you are a cave person who falls for everything. Okay. Now you're more anxious at your computer, still typing things in. Great. Last thing, money. So in the 20th century, British colonial scientists set their sights on Africa, specifically African diets. One of these scientists was Cicely Williams, one of the first women to graduate Oxford with a medical degree, and she starts researching kwashiorkor, which I'll explain later. But she brings this disease into the minds of British academics, European academics in general. Research is also widely racist, so if you look it up, be aware of that. But this isn't about her. This is about the exploitation that her research underwent. So, kwashiorkor is malnutrition disease. It occurs in areas of poverty in older children who are generally malnourished. So it presents itself with a distension of the abdomen and an emaciation of the limbs. You've probably seen it before in a photo. So this kind of blows up in the British academic sphere. Everyone's talking about it, everyone's hypothesizing. But there's not a general consensus of why it happens. Some think it's protein deficiency, some think it's vitamin deficiency, some think it's just basically malnutrition, it just happens. The thing that gets popularized though is the protein deficiency slant. Why? Okay, we're gonna bring it back. So while all this research is happening, Britain is going through this optimal nutrition phase. And by that I mean everyone is chugging vitamin smoothies, everyone is trying to get their flour enriched instead of whole wheat, and mothers are feeding babies baby formula instead of breast milk. And this is because there was this huge media campaign for baby formula because it's optimized scientifically. So these companies get rich over in Britain, and they see this kwashiorkor research and they say, profit. So they walk on over to Africa and they start propagandizing. Why I say propagandizing and not marketing is because they start lying. So they get their little marketing people, they put them in nurse costumes, they send them into African hospitals, and they sell baby formula to mothers in impoverished areas to cure kwashiorkor based on scientific research. This doesn't work, mainly because Nestle, which is one of the biggest companies doing this, was focused on profit and not on the needs of these people. See, they can't actually afford that much formula. And so mothers start diluting it, which makes malnutrition worse, which makes kwashiorkor worse, which makes everything really bad. And it gets so bad that Nestle gets called up in front of Congress to testify. And the thing they use to defend themselves is Cicely Williams' research. You know, the one that didn't conclude anything. They twist it, and they basically get away with it. The cherry on top is while all of this media campaign is happening, scientists are working with indigenous peoples in Africa, trying to find a cure for kwashiorkor, and they find it. They find it with ingredients that everyone has in their pantry, that are easily accessible and cheap. And it works, except the fact that they don't have enough funding, and they don't have media attention, and so it goes unnoticed. This isn't the first time companies have twisted facts and figures in research to suit their needs. It won't be the last. There's very little you can do about it. You can protest, you can boycott, and that's great. Community action, that was great. But you can't do anything on the research side, except know the biases of your sources. Understand that if someone's funding something, they probably want something. Know why they want it. The scientific community is not the enemy, but companies who spread misinformation for profit are. So I'll leave you with this. I'm not telling you to ignore question science. Question science. Scientists question science all the time. But make sure you're doing it on the basis of new information, not on the basis of marketing, not on the basis of what you see more, not on the basis of who has more money. Oh, next time you hear your favorite podcast bro say something, maybe don't repeat it before researching it. Otherwise, you are a cave person. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Next up, we're going to have Brissa. Brissa is part of our leadership council for TED-Ed. She's our public relations manager, and she's going to have her speech right now called These Trembling Walls.
I have a question for you all. And I want it to seep into your brain and pull it apart piece by piece until you truly do know the answer. Who are you really? Now, I'm not talking about this image of yourself that you've built up to present to a certain crowd of people. I'm not talking about this image of yourself that you've built up for strangers on social media to self-consciously scroll through your profile. I'm talking about the person you wake up with, the person that looks you right back in the mirror. In today's world, people have so many opinions about who you are supposed to be, the way that you're supposed to interact with people, and the way that you're supposed to do things. Social media has taken a big part of that and has a lot of saying behind who we are as people. Social media tells me, for example, that I'm too loud to like quiet spaces. Social media also tells me that some of the clothes that I wear are too simple or out of date. And social media also tells me that I'm not skinny enough to be considered pretty. What does social media say about you? What do other people say about you? We as human beings start to build walls around our true selves. And this is based off of the way that other people perceive us. And this starts at really young ages. For me, this started in 2nd grade. Kindergarten, 1st grade, I flew by. I was amazing. I had so many friends, so many people around me, and I had a smile on my face. However, 2nd grade year comes around. Still have that amazing attitude, my friends by my side, but this girl comes in. She's new to the school. She doesn't have that many friends, and she's trying to make her way into the school. I'm so very nice to her, but the only thing that she can give me is to be rude. She dictated everything I did, and she placed the first brick in my wall. A wall that soared above me tens of thousands of feet in the air. She contradicted everything I did. She made fun of some of the people I would hang out with or the people I would talk to. She even called me a big green dinosaur on my birthday one year. Now, I was in 2nd grade, so that completely destroyed me. Am I really that green? I'm not green at all. Did I wear a lot of green? Yes. However, I was not a dinosaur. This continued up into about 4th grade, and then I switched schools to a charter school that had ugly uniform colors, let me tell you. Khaki, white, light blue, and navy blue, they're the basic colors. We can at least throw purple in there. The one thing with this uniform was that we were allowed to wear, of course, our uniform colors and collared shirts, but for girls, we were allowed to wear colored headbands or put ribbons in our hair. And for me, that also included knee-high socks. Let me tell you, I had a collection of knee-high socks. I had ones with donuts on them. I had ones with dinosaurs on them. I even had the coolest Christmas pair ones, and they were saguaro cactuses wrapped in Christmas tree lightings. You best bet when it was Christmas, I was strutting all of everything in those socks. And those were amazing. I was still afraid of what people were saying about me. People made fun of me in front of my face. And thus, the wall begun to become higher and higher. Soon enough, I couldn't even look over it. This also carried into when I started middle school. And at that charter school, middle school was considered 6th through 8th grade. This was also when COVID hit. So I was able to avoid people's opinions for the longest time. Maybe about a year-ish, and then I went back. I ditched the knee-high socks because those were apparently out of style. But also, this included the masks that we had to wear when we came back from COVID. I love my mom, but she got some cheesy masks, needless to say. I remember this one mask though, and I really liked it. It was a red Crayola, like Crayola crayon, and I loved that mask. But people hated it, so I just opted for the more popular, stylish black masks. They were boring. But I did anything to please people. I did anything to fit in with other people. Little did I know that I was actually separating my physical self from who I actually really wanted to be. This also carried in through 8th grade when I switched schools again, but this time I was back with people that I had really liked to be with, including one of my best friends, Hayden, Elle, and other people that I had been really close friends with in elementary school. However, I was still pressured to fit in. The wall just grew higher and higher. I knew the next thing I was going to stores buying out my new outfits because I had finally been able to wear anything but white, khaki, light blue, and navy blue. I can't believe that. So I opted for what was popular. That was graphic t-shirts, one of which was Ice Cube. I never did listen to Ice Cube. I just wore it to fit in, to be popular. At the time, I liked bands like the Gorillaz and Sublime. I still really do like Sublime, by the way. But overall, it shaped who I was. I was so concerned about what other people were saying about me that I didn't realize I was separating myself from who I was meant to be. This again carried in through high school, where I am now at Boulder Creek. However, my traits and everything had vanished. I was no longer myself. I was this wannabe popular kid that would do anything for attention. I had friendships that I didn't like at all, but I was only friends with them to be nice, I guess, but they knew people. So I was popular in their point of view. However, this started to carry into sophomore year, but then all of that changed. Before I knew it, those walls that I had so carefully built up came crashing down. At the end of August, beginning of September, just days before my birthday, I was informed that a childhood best friend of mine had passed away. A friend of mine that I wanted to do everything together with. We had plans to go to the same high school and marry the boys that we thought were cute in our class. You know, we were in 2nd grade. It destroyed me. I laid on the ground, broken pieces. These walls that had surrounded myself were gone. They were no longer there. Only one person was willing to stop and make sure that I was really okay. Emma, thank you for picking up all of my pieces and showing me what life is again. She showed me that it was okay to be vulnerable to another person. She showed me that it was okay to cry and be vulnerable with another human being. She taught me what life was really about. She taught me it was okay to open up to my parents about some things, and now I've grown my relationship with both of my parents. What I'm telling you is that even though today's world is so full of opinions and everybody pointing you and making sure that, oh, you're not as popular as I am, it's okay. It's okay to be vulnerable with another human being. It's okay to sit there and cry, and everything isn't okay. I now know so much about myself because instead of picking those pieces back up, Emma taught me how to build a foundation. I now know that I really do enjoy Mother Nature. I take my dog, Sam, on for hikes, and I just start walking barefoot out in the desert. I like being connected to Mother Nature. I like baking, interacting with my friends, and making sure that they're all right. I want you to take two things away from this speech. One, stop letting people dictate who you are. Wear those knee-high socks, okay? Maybe not like all of the time, but wear them when you want to, okay? I actually might even still have a pair of these socks. I should have sported them tonight, but that's okay. And two, it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to show somebody who you truly are at ground zero, rock bottom. It's okay to present yourself as something that is your natural self, not this perceived and built up image. And instead of building those walls around yourself, build a foundation in which you can stem off of, reach out to, and overall find new aspects and things that you truly enjoy about yourself. Thank you.
That was amazing, Brissa. Thank you so much. Next up from our leadership council is Maya. Maya is our vice president, and she's done such an amazing job this year, tutoring some of the new members of our club, giving feedback, helping to set up all these amazing things that we have here tonight. So Maya, come on up.
I have a superpower. It's ancient, and it dates back to our ancestors who walked this earth nearly 2 million years ago. Humans once relied on this superpower in order to survive, but in the convenience of today's world, this ability has been lost to time. This power lives in every single human, including you. And while a handful of people have attempted to unleash the potential of this gift, many of us have just skimmed the surface. That's right, you know what I'm talking about. The ability to sweat. It's not exclusive to humanity. In fact, we share this power with many other animals. But through centuries of natural selection and meticulous shifts in our genetic makeup, humans have evolved to be some of the best endurance runners on this planet. About a year ago, I picked up a book for an anatomy class called Born to Run. It's centered around a man who set out to find the secrets of an elite running tribe in Mexico known as the Tarahumara. As he studied these seemingly superhuman runners, he explored the endurance running hypothesis, which suggests that humans evolved as persistence hunters, meaning we would bring down our prey not just through spears or through knives, but through literally running them to sheer exhaustion. At around the same time, I decided to join my school's cross-country team. I had done track for the past 2 years, but stayed with the sprinters, convincing myself that a long-distance runner was somebody I would never be. However, after a bit of outside encouragement, personal development, and a lot of inspiration from the book, I decided to join the cross-country runners for summer training. Needless to say, it was quite brutal. Despite waking up at 6 a.m., the heat still managed to crawl into our practices. The sun was always on me, my throat was always parched, and there never seemed to be a moment where I wasn't sweating. I wondered how the runners from my team and the runners from the tribe could run so fast for so long in such hot weather and be absolutely fine. I struggled with just 5 miles at a good pace. Those on my team could do 8 or 9 easily. The Tarahumara could run up to 200 miles in a single session. Now, I want you to think of an animal who could outrun a human. I'm sure many come to mind. Horses, dogs, cheetahs, pretty much any animal that just seems fast. And it's true. Most of these animals will completely beat a human in a 50-yard dash or speed race. But if you take a person who's committed to their running, passionate and dedicated, and pit them against a horse, for example, and make them run for endurance, a human stands a pretty good chance at winning. In fact, it's happened before. Nicole Teeny, an advanced marathoner and long-distance runner, raced a horse in a 50-mile ultramarathon and won. It wasn't just her unmatched athleticism, skill, passion, and determination that led her to cross that finish line before a horse could. It was something in the body. Now, part of it is evolutionary adaptation, such as short toes and long legs. Another crucial factor is the upright posture that humans hold. As quadrupeds, or four-legged animals, stretch their limbs out for a stride, they bring them in, slamming their organs against their chest cavity and forcing air out of their body. This allows for respiration, and it also creates a 1-to-1 breathing ratio. 1 stride, 1 breath. Humans, on the other hand, stand tall on 2 legs, allowing them to breathe in a variety of different ways in correlation to their stride. This is a severe advantage. But there's one more trait that really stood out, that really made the humans so much better than the animals: the sweating. While other animals overheat quickly, humans can cool themselves off while exercising. As moisture prickles through the sweat glands and settles on the skin, it evaporates and cools simultaneously, allowing us to continue exerting our bodies without having to stop. This allows for us to run 50-mile marathons. It allows for us to beat horses in these races. Sorry, give me 1 second. Humans have evolved to be some of the best endurance runners on this planet. It's through centuries of meticulous shifts that we have gotten to the point where we have now. It's through years and years of meticulous changes that have led us to become the great endurance runners that we are. I want you to take away from this to utilize the powers of your body to the full extent, whether it be through hiking, jogging, cycling, swimming. Just by trying to utilize the powers of your body, you will learn to understand the powers of yourself and who you are. And maybe one day, even you can outrun a horse. Thank you.
Nice job, Maya. And then last but certainly not least is Coulter. Now, besides having his own fan club, CJ is the president of our club. This is his 3rd year here, and he has been a charismatic, kind, and helpful leader throughout every step of the way. So without further ado, here's CJ.
Hi. It's good to see you guys. Okay. I want you. Dang, I'm handsome. That's crazy. Sorry. I want you guys to raise your hand if you've been on your phone at some point this evening. And I know you have been because Varara made sure of that.
Okay, good. Okay, I want you to put your, all right, keep it, no, keep them up. I want you to put your hand down if you were doing something important, like texting your mom to pick you up afterwards. I don't know, whatever is important. Keep your hand up if you were playing Block Blast or Candy Crush or, updating your Pinterest board. Interesting. So we got a few, just a few. Okay, you can put them all down now. So before you tune out again, in case you weren't paying attention, or before you get defensive about me, reprimanding you about studies of technology being bad on your eyes and your brain and your pancreas, and you need to quit cold turkey, just chill out for a second, because actually, I wanted to say that's perfectly fine, and actually good job for tending to your minds. Honestly, the people who were ignoring me or planning on ignoring me later in the speech, even though it's the closing remarks, I actually wanted to say you might have the most interest and feel the most validated by what I'm going to talk about tonight. Because I believe I can turn your apathy for just another speech into your greatest asset for success in life. And if you think I can't do it, well, hopefully your curiosity is piqued by now, so let's go find out. Humans, biologically speaking, are animals, and as such, have many of the same physical cravings and needs as animals. Just as a cow might crave tender, juicy grass in the morning, humans, likewise, have physical needs for things like food, water, shelter, and anything else that is essential for them to survive in their environment. However, what most people don't know is that humans, animals, like Fuzzy Wuzzy, also have psychological needs that are just as essential for their survival in any environment and their development. You see, our brains are like these little pink hamburgers prancing around in our noggins, and they don't like sitting still for too long. I don't know if you guys ever got put in timeout as a kid, where you'd sit and stare at a beige wall for 10 minutes, but for me that was agony. I rather would have got my eye taken out or something like that. Yes. Because you see, whenever our brains don't get enough mental stimulation or activity, they give us the sensation of boredom, telling us they don't get enough. In much the same way that we get hungry in the uncomfortable sensation of hunger when we don't eat enough food. Boredom is the mental equivalent of that. So what is the brain's food? It's anything that it can pick up with external stimuli, anything you can touch with your senses. It can involve looking at things, listening for things, tasting stuff, touching stuff, and all sorts of stuff. And so whenever you're bored, this might manifest in you're doodling or you're listening to music, or you might even write a speech. No comment, but yes, your brain can also use internal stimuli in order to feed on this boredom, which might manifest in your class period as taking a nap or getting lost in thought. Whatever it is that you do during the drab moments of waiting in the room in the urgent care, these are likely your physiological responses to a lack in brain activity. It is the snack for your brain when it's been a while since lunchtime, but isn't quite dinner time yet. So we've all had a boring class period or got put in timeout and been bored for a little bit. But there are other times where you're stuck in this prolonged states of boredom, where you have to for hours or days on end of your mind just feeling blah. And in that, it can lead to some rather interesting chains of behavior, or lead you to do some interesting things like, why am I doing any of this? For example, you might find yourself in the morning, just on Saturday, perusing YouTube for however long, just got nothing better to do, and then you get tired of that, so you might walk outside and just enjoy the lovely breeze, and maybe bring a book to read, and then you get tired of that, so you go inside I feel inclined to do something physical, so I go and I do chores because I finally just feel inclined to do chores, and then you get tired of that, so you just find yourself walking around your kitchen island for forever, staring at the pantry, and then to the fridge, and to the pantry again. But essentially you just go through this long list of activities in order to stimulate or answer to the hunger pains of your brain because you're just that bored. And the amazing thing is, you'll never stop. Your brain doesn't ever really get full. There's not ever a point where okay, I'm done. I'm going to stare and sit in the beige wall because I feel done. No, you're constantly hungry. The hunger pains never go away in your mind. And if you don't feed them, you're just going to get worse and more intense, just like physical hunger. Anyway, so that's why I wanted to give kudos to the people who were planning on ignoring me this evening. I would have preferred that you lost yourself in the land of online solitaire instead of staring at me with a jaw agape and your drool falling on the floor. It's just, hopefully I'm tickling your brain just a little bit now. But I guess if not, you can tune out again, that's fine. But if you are paying attention, you might be interested in this next part because this is where it starts getting applicable to you. You see, despite their apparent neediness, our minds are also the directors of our lives and our behaviors and actions through a little thing that we discussed earlier called habit forming. You see, habits act as shortcuts for us in everyday tasks in our life. As the self-help author James Clear describes it, the more consistently we do an action, the more likely it will become a habit. It's the reason why nowadays you don't think twice about tying your shoe, but as a kid, you had to, or as a toddler, you had to think really hard about tying each individual knot, unless you wear slip-ons like me, in which case you still have that problem. Yes. Of course, habits are very interesting because our minds keenly detect repetitive actions that we take in our life. And it does it for efficiency and just to make life easy. It also does it to find consistent sources of pleasure and patterns to avoid pain. If I go to my grandma's house 5 times in a row, there are fresh baked cookies there, then the next time I'm craving fresh baked cookies, I'm going to grandma's house because I've reinforced that action with some repetitive behavior. Likewise, if I burn my hand on the stove, and then I burn my hand on the stove again, another time, this is a habit. But I think the most interesting thing about habits is that we actually formulate them by accident many times in our life. Like earlier today, I found out that every once in a while I check if my truck is locked, but I've noticed now I do it every single time that I leave my truck. Not as a conscious choice, just because it's the repeated action. It's just become a habit for me. So where does boredom fit in all of this? Well, as we discussed, boredom inevitably compels us to do some sort of action in order to stimulate our minds. So we ought to think very carefully about what those actions are going to be, because the consistency with which we do them is what's going to turn them quickly into a habit, whether for better or for worse. Think about every single time that you've ever looked at your phone or pulled it out during a boring moment of your life. You're like, oh, I'm late in the lobby, entertain me. And I don't know, I'm at school, entertain me. And I have to watch another speech, please distract me, please. Yes. Anyways, I'm not here to govern you guys on like what habits are good and what habits are bad. That's not my place. And what you guys do with your free time is totally up to you. If in the lazy moments of your life you want to use that in order to just chill out and play some Block Blast, that's totally fine. If that's what you want to do, then you go ahead and do that. But I do want you guys to at least consider and take a reality check on the runaway habits that you may have in your life that you may not know that you have. And to consider, in the boring moments of your life, you are able to just change it and do anything you want with just a little bit of repetitive action. For example, let's say in the 2 grueling moments you wait for the bus each day and you're like, I just need to play Tetris or something. What if instead you listen to an ebook? And on the way, and within just a few months, you could finish entire novels without having to set aside the time to like actually go to the library. Or say that you're having another sleepless night and your mind's just restless and you can't get it to go to sleep. Instead of staring at the deadly, ghastly blue lights of a TV screen, instead, you could do some yoga or some light exercise to help chill your mind out and help you go to sleep. Just a few weeks of doing some sleeping time chaturangas, and not only would you cure your neck tension or back pain or whatever, but you could possibly cure it without having to set aside time to go to the gym or to see a physical therapist, which is freaking awesome. Forgive my language. Yes, but it's amazing what you can accomplish in the boring moments of a life. Moments that you probably don't even give a second thinking about. You think you have all these moments in your life that you're not doing anything, but they're there, and they're there for you. Because guys, you have the capacity to architect and design the individual waking moments of your life, whether they're the fun moments, the bad moments, or the boring moments. And so the question is, are you going to let things like boredom and runaway habits be the building constraint or the budget on your project, or are you going to let them be the foundation of your dream home? Because boredom, as we discussed, compels us, and is evidently going to lead us astray somewhere. Might as well be somewhere that we want to go. Thank you. So how about one more round of applause for all 10 speakers tonight? These students have worked so incredibly hard over the last year to make these speeches, to come here to perform for you tonight. So we want to say thank you again for your support. Thank you for everyone who brought in food donations, all the volunteers. Right now is a great time. I'm going to have all 10 members come on up. So family, friends, if you want to take pictures, now's the time. Mr. Clark, you can go ahead and turn off the lights and everything. That way they can get some good pictures. Thank you for coming. There's food in the lobby if you still want to hang out and meet and talk with some of the speakers. And we hope you have an amazing rest of your night. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
They did great.
They did.
Yeah.
It's so cool to see what they can accomplish over the course